Okay, moving forward, we are going to discuss accessing the ASP100's web user interface. Again, you need to know the IP of the ASP100. You have to have a computer on the same network to access the ASP100, or the ASP100 has to be on a static IP, so you can access it remotely. But we're going to show you, for this exercise, the computer I am using is on the same network as the ASP100. I used Fing.io as per the prior tutorial to get the information for the IP that the ASP100 is in. So I know the IP. I'm simply going to access it, I'm simply going to launch a browser. I'm going to type in the IP. There it is. I'm going to hit enter. And you will see a prompt for a login prompt. The standard login prompt for every ASP100 from the factory is admin and numeric 1. Login. Okay, now we are looking at the ASP100's user interface. So you know you are in the zone here. You've made it to the ASP100. Let's discuss the menu items on the left-hand side. So you will see Stream Setup. Under Operation Setup, you'll see Stream Setup. Under System Setup, you'll see Volume, Network Setup, Timestamp, View System Logs, View Metadata Logs, and the Administration menu, which is the System Management. Okay, when you come into the ASP, you're going to see the Network Configuration Setup. This ASP100 is on a local area network here in Austin, Texas. It's getting DHCP, which is a dynamic IP from a router on net. This is not visible outside of this network. So to access it, I need to know the IP that it's on. Just showed you logged in via the browser with a computer on that same network to hit it. If this was a static IP configuration and you had a DNS server, you put that information in here. To change that, then you would be able to remote into the box outside of your network externally. Okay, so let's look at setting up your streaming feeds on the ASP100. Now, if you purchase this box directly from StoreStreams, we would send this unit to you already configured. You probably wouldn't even need to log into this. You just plug in the device and it's going to start playing. So it would be playing your feed that you paid for from StoreStreams. If you had multiple feeds from StoreStreams, then they would all be here. We would ask you prior to sending it to you, what feed do you want it to start off on, and that's the feed that it would be set to. So let's just say you're buying this for yourself, or you own maybe your own background music company, or you have a restaurant and you have feeds that you want to put in here from an internet radio station or something like that. Just make sure you're paying the royalties on whatever you're doing, because if you own a restaurant or bar or whatever it may be and you're playing music illegally, you can get in a lot of trouble. So, but that's a whole other talk show. Right now we're discussing the stream setup for the ASP100. So, in saying all this, the streaming setup is very easy. You would select the menu item on the left for streaming setup. This obviously has, meaning there's a server in Vancouver playing, let's just call it an adult contemporary channel, and there's a redundant feed playing in Toronto, the same adult contemporary channel. Now this is probably for a Canadian customer's footprint that we have, and in saying that, you see the channel titles, the redundant channel list, the redundant count, and then the buffer rate. So let's talk about the redundant count and the buffer rate here for this exercise, because we have two channels playing the same feed, one in Vancouver, one in Toronto. So let's look at the redundant count feed. What the redundant count feed is, and this happens in milliseconds. Let's just, for this exercise, say we're listening, everything's going good. Vancouver server decides to just crater and fall off the map. Well, the ASP100 will say, hey, Vancouver server, I'm not receiving any data from you. So it pings the server with the redundant count feed and says, and for this exercise, it's set up to 5. It says, Hey, server, I need data. No response. Hey, server, I need data again. No response. Hey, Vancouver server, need data again. Yet, and that's the third time. No response. And it says, hey, server, I need data. No response. And then the last time it checks, does it 5 times in this exercise because it's set to 5. You can set it to 10. You can set it to 1. You can set it to 2, whatever. We like to set them in between 3, 4, and 5. If you can't get a response from a server after, 5 pings to it, server's probably down. So then what happens is the redundant channel within that list will pick up in playing. So in this exercise, we were saying that Vancouver had cratered. It pinged Vancouver 5 times, and then the Toronto feed will start playing. Now note, there's like a 45-second or so window for all this magic to happen, meaning it's going to ping, 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 ping. Nothing happens. Then it's going to switch over to the other feed dynamically. It's going to, whatever the buffer rate is set to, and I'm going to discuss the buffer rate here, it's going to then fill the buffer according to what rate you had it set at, and then it's going to play the feed. So it's not instantaneous. It may take 45 seconds to a minute for it to happen, maybe even a minute and a half. Be patient. So that's how that works in this exercise with channel 1 and redundant channel B being StoreStream's Toronto. Okay, let's discuss the buffer rate. The ASP100 has anywhere from a 60-second buffer to like a 3.5-minute buffer. The closer you are to the 99 percentile there, you're going to be closer to the 3.5-minute buffer. The closer you are to the 0, you're going to be anywhere close to the 0 to 60-second buffer. Okay, and why this adjustable buffer exists is, let's just say you have a customer he's a rural customer. He is in a pretty bad internet space, which it's hard to believe now, and with modern technology that there's not, that some folks just don't have good internet, but it exists, trust me. So they don't have a lot of bandwidth, and you can adjust the buffer here to kind of help mask that, meaning if their bandwidth is oscillating in and out, you can keep enough buffer within the unit to have consistent playback as long as it's receiving chunks, from the internet. It'll keep playing without hiccup and skips. So the adjustable buffer is really ideal in kind of bandwidth situations that are kind of etchy. So really good feature to have. The ASP100 does a really good job of this. Now then, let's look at adding channels to this. So anytime you want to do something with the ASP100, you want to stop the device. You just don't want to make changes and do this. So the ASP100, I know on my LAN is playing, so I want to hit stop. So I hit stop, and this goes for changing the channel, adjusting anything else. Just always hit stop. Don't just change the channel or whatever. Just hit stop, then change the channel, then hit play again. So just keep that in mind. So I know the device stopped. My little prompt came up that all functions happened to 100%. And I want to change it to Classic Rock. Let's just say we're going to change the channel to Classic Rock. Now, I only have one Classic Rock channel here, so in this exercise, I don't have a redundant feed. So, and I'll discuss this in a second, but if I want to start playing Classic Rock, I would simply select Classic Rock like I did here and hit play. Again, my prompt will show that all processes happen correctly. Hit OK. In 10-15 seconds, my player out in the world will start playing Classic Rock. So let's just say we want to add feeds to the ASP100. Again, you would simply, let's just stop Classic Rock for right now. Okay, I get my prompt that says everything happened okay. I hit edit, and here's where you're going to add feeds. Now, the ASP100 will hold about 20 feeds. You can either have 20 standalone feeds, or you can have 10 channel A's and 10 channel B's that are running redundant. But in total, it's completely 20 feeds. So you can have, again, 20 standalone feeds, or 10 of option A and 10 of option B running redundant. Now, the same feed, just A and B. So, and then you would select A and B here. So if I had a classic rock, over here, I would put the option B for classic rock over here as the redundant channel. So to add channels, you would simply click Add, and here's where you would add your additional channel. Add, and you can keep adding channels to fill the, if you add 20 channel selection, 10 channel selection with, whatever it may be, you can add that. Again, you can add those channels just by clicking Add. After that, you want to hit Apply to save your work. In this case, you're going to need a title and an IP import to play a shoutcast or an icecast feed. It's got to be a constant bitrate feed, MP3 feed. That's the only limitation at this current point for the ASP100. Highly recommend constant bitrate, MP3, icecast, shoutcast version 1 or 2 feeds. So it's IP port for the feeds. Again, you would just simply hit Apply, hit OK. Obviously, there's no. I didn't change anything, so of course it didn't. I mean, it didn't save it, but that's how you would save it. So we kind of discussed this part here, and again, once you added your change, you can change the channel. It stopped at the current point, and hit play. Again, it's real important. Hit stop before making any changes. Play, stop, play, stop. Get into that habit of doing that. You'll have just long life of the player without it getting conflicted and you having to reboot the system. Okay, so the ASP100, if you look at the system setup, that's if you look at the operation set or the stream setup, that's what we just covered. Let's get on to looking at the system setup, which you have a real-time volume adjustment here, so you can adjust the volume here accordingly. I like to start off at 65 or so percent, 64, 65, so not blowing out the input channels of either the receiver or the 70-volt system. Obviously, you want to go look at your equipment to make sure that you're not clipping. If your equipment has indicator lights on the input channel, that you got a good steady signal, you make the adjustment here. Or if you have just a consumer grade amplifier like a receiver, listen that you're not over distorting the channel so you don't blow out the channel. Just so start somewhere in between 60-40 and raise your volume accordingly. You may have to get out of your desk or whatever. Hopefully you have a laptop hooked up when you're setting the thing up and you're close to the receiver and the speakers and you can hear all this. But again, you're gonna have to have some visual or you're gonna have to some audible cue to note what's a good level. Obviously, you don't want to start at 100% because if the input requirement is lower than what the ASP is spitting out, then you may be a little below a channel. So it's better to start somewhere in the middle, work my way up. So keep that in mind. So that describes volume channel. It is real time. If I turn it down, you're gonna hear the volume go all the way down. You're gonna turn it up, you can hear it go all the way up. Let's get on to network setup. We discussed this earlier. Initially, when you log in, you see the network configuration. This being propagated lets you know that you're getting an IP from if you got DHCP going. If you want to make changes and you want to put this on a static IP and a DNS server, you can do that as well. You need to know all the information from your carrier of doing static IP and your subnet mask and gateway, etc., etc. So that kind of describes this. If you want to change the name of the ASP100, you can change it to whatever your customer's name is or whatever. If you're logging into remotely, you'll have that information in the name. If they search it on their network or have some sort of network device like Fing, they'll see it under that name as well. So let's go into timestamps. This is kind of important. So, because this ties into something else in the value chain. I am in Central U.S. Canadian time here. So we're in Texas. We're in Austin, Texas. We're Central time. So I have this device and sit in my office with Central time. Obviously, I set that. It'll automatically synchronize time, date, etc. For the time zone that you put in. So just select your time. Just select your time zone here. And I'm going to show you why this is quasi-important. It's good to change this, and it's for another reason. And all you got to do is to save it. Just hit apply. Okay, so it's applying. Why this is important? If you go and later down, I'm going to show you system management. There's a feature in the ASP100 that if you need to clear the device at a certain time, a day or night, that you can set the device to reboot itself. So this is quasi important. Again, set your time zone, or for your customer's time zone. That way you can set up the device to do some calling back home and clearing some IP tables later, and I'll show you that in a second. So that sets up time zone. Let's discuss system logs. The system logs are going to tell you everything from the unit started playing, it stopped, what time it did a system checkup, what time did it call home. This kind of stuff is in the system logs. Very handy, especially if you're troubleshooting. Why did this thing stop? Did it crash? What happened here? Did the network give out? You'll see this information here in the system logs. The metadata logs are a little different. There's nothing playing right now, so we don't have them. But what the metadata logs do is they capture the metadata from the songs playing. So you'll have current track playing and a list of tracks playing. Now these aren't logs that you would send to reporting. This is more just for your information that, hey, this song played. In case you hear a song that you don't like, or you have a provider that provided the song and you're like, hey, I don't like that song, or whatever it may be, you can go here and check what songs were played if the metadata is passing. Now then, saying all that, at StoreStreams, we provide all of the logging, and we do that server side for our customers, and we pay all of the Pro Music accounts to the royalty collection agencies. So these aren't the logs that we send to them. The logs that we have to send are a lot more detailed and have a lot more information in them than the logs you would see here. This is just more of a reference for what song was playing at what time and where. That's it. It doesn't have ISRC part numbers and a bunch of account information and different things like that. So it's not the logs you would need to be sending in reports with. So just FYI. The reporting requirements are a little more strenuous than what is shown here. Okay, so now we discussed that. Let's get into the system management. All right, system management. Now this is pretty cool. So system management is, if we have a firmware update, really simple. You would hit browse, add the file for the firmware update, and then hit apply. Firmware updates would come either from us or Inter-M or whoever it may be. If we send you the executable to put in there, you hit apply, initialize, it upgrades the firmware. You can do this on network, and obviously if you have the box on a static IP, you can remote into the box and do a firmware update. Again, hit stop before doing anything. Again, just hit stop. Here, you can set up you can change the user account or the admin password to the unit. Highly recommend you do this, especially if you put it on a static IP, because these things will be visible on the internet. Obviously, I just told everybody that the username is admin and the password is 1. So you would probably want to change this for your customer, or in case you're managing these boxes that you put a password in that you know or that you have the information for, that you can change the box, especially if the box is on static IP. If it's just on a local LAN, then again you're going to need to use something like FingIO to know the IP for DHCP to log in on the local LAN to get it. Now here's where the time comes into play. Remember we were discussing the time setup. So let's just say and this is ideal, you want to do this, and I'll explain to you why. We have a system check setup, and so what this does is it lets the box call home, clear the IP tables, reboot itself, refresh the internet connection, so it's good for the next day. So right now this is set to inactive. If I set it to active, I can tell this box to basically reboot itself at some given point in the 24-hour span of the day. So let's just say this box is going to a restaurant, and I know that restaurant closes down at 3 in the morning. Everybody's gone out the door by 3 o'clock, but they're open again at like 5:30 in the morning for the morning shift because they got to cook breakfast. So I have this window between 3 and 5:30 for this box to reboot itself. So I say, hey box, boot yourself at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning. That clears the IP tables, that repings the server. It sets the box up just kind of like, hey, I'm a fresh connection. And this will keep the box running trouble-free and long-term for the long haul. So highly recommend you do this. Now, obviously, if you've got a 24-hour scenario, not sure if it'll work for you, but I really recommend in some low of that 24-hour scenario that you do this. And it'll keep the box running long term for the long haul, and it clears the buffers. It clears just everything within the unit to just give it a fresh start. So that's what that is. And again, you would hit apply. It's really simple. I just made it active. So at 4 in the morning, this unit's going to reboot itself every morning. We've got a simple reboot. If you need to reboot the system, you can reboot the system remotely. Hit apply. If you need to do a factory reset of the system, you just hit apply down here. So this is all of the information you kind of need to know to either set up an ASP100 or to manage it. Pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. Again, if you buy a box from Store Streams, and we are providing you the background music service as well, this box is going to come configured. You may not even log into this thing. It's just going to plug in the Cat5, plug in the power outlet to it, and it's just going to plug the thing into your power amp or your receiver, and it's just going to start playing. So you may want to log in to adjust the volume or do something like that, but again, you now know how to do this, and that kind of wraps up this little demo for accessing and using the ASP100's user interface. Thank you.